My name is Chad Swank, and I'm a physical therapist by training, so I'm accustomed to following the lead of a physician, so this works right into my wheelhouse. I have been given the topic of the interplay of motor symptoms and cognitive symptoms in people with Parkinson's. I think Dr. Stewart did a nice job of talking about how they're not just motor issues. It's not just bradykinesia and rigidity and tremor, right? There are other issues. So, I only have 15 minutes like Dr. Stewart, so we'll run through this. But I want to talk a little bit about walking and the role that how we think and our level of cognition plays into that. And then a dual tasking paradigm which tries to pair walking with another task. And then some of the studies that I've done in this area. So walking, and if I use the word gait, they're synonymous, so I might use them interchangeably. But walking, we used to think of once you learned it as a child, it was automatic, and that was it. You just walked, and you really gave it no thought. However, what research is showing and what we now believe is that walking is much more complicated, much more complex, with everything from the motor issues necessary. So you have coordination that's required, you have the muscles that are necessary. Certainly the basal ganglia plays a role in that, but you also have emotion plays a part, the limbic system, and you have some cognitive areas that are the frontal lobe that's involved in walking. And so now our thinking about walking has changed a bit. We think that walking requires a certain level of thinking, because walking in the real world is complex. How I walk across this floor here is different than how I walk to my car in the parking lot, which is different than walking up a mountain or in a crowded mall, right? And so there's some online things that our brain is having to adjust to. And so there's some thinking that goes into it. So whether it's how quickly I'm trying to walk, how far I'm trying to walk, what the environment is like, all of those, the terrain, all of those things play into the posture and the transitions that I need to make and the amount of attention that is required. So where this comes into play in people with Parkinson's is, well, and not just people with Parkinson's, but people with neurologic issues or people who fall, is that we equate cognitive impairment with dementia, and people difficulty walking or gait abnormalities with falls. I think those relationships are still there, but increasingly what we're seeing is that there's a relationship here such that if I have slower walking speeds, that maybe is predictive of some cognitive loss or some dementia. Or if I have some cognitive impairment, that maybe puts me at risk for falling more frequently. And so there's an overlap there, which is challenging. And so one way that in physical therapy, but also in the lab, that we measure or that we try to assess this is through pairing walking with another task, whether it's just walking and talking, or walking and carrying something, or walking and trying to do a memory task. And all of those things are called a dual task paradigm, or dual tasking. The idea behind it is walking takes so much attention and so much energy, and if I have to do another activity on top of that, now I maybe am dividing that pie up into pieces, and eventually I can have more attention required than a pie that I actually have, right? And so if I have sitting around my Thanksgiving dinner table, if I have a pie that's 6 pieces, but I only have, but I have 8 people at the table, something's got to give, right? And it's probably not going to be my own piece. I'm probably going to get my piece. I'll take it from my son. But that's the dilemma. Is that in Parkinson's we have physical characteristics that are maybe diminishing a bit, and as Dr. Stewart alluded to, as the disease progresses, we have some cognitive changes, and so now our attention pie is shrinking. And so a dual task in Parkinson's, walking when paired with another activity, has shown to have a slower walking speed, kind of a variety of variable stepping patterns with shorter steps, kind of an inconsistent stepping pattern. And so what this graph is showing is that as the task gets more complex, the variability increases. Or measured another way, as the task becomes increasingly complex, my walking speed slows. And you can see even in some of the healthy controls, there are trade-offs made, but in people with Parkinson's, the trade-off becomes more significant. So in my lab, what we've done is we've tried to take a look at dual tasking. And so our first study was trying to see how, what kind of physical activity people with Parkinson's have as compared to their peers. And so in our sample, people with Parkinson's had about 4,000 steps per day. And people that did not have Parkinson's, that were age and gender matched, had about 5,000 steps per day. So people with Parkinson's walked a little bit, took fewer steps. They were less physically active. And not only that, but the intensity at which they were active was less. And so they were less active, and then they were not as intensely active. So we had measured their cognitive function, and people with Parkinson's were functioning at about, in our sample, functioning about the 30th percentile, and people with their matched peers were in about the 50th percentile. So their cognitive function was diminished a little bit. But when we paired the two, we had them do a walking and a dual task. People with Parkinson's required more time to complete the walking task. So all of that kind of matches up with what I've said already, okay? But when we look to see what was predictive of how physically active they were, it was their ability to do the dual task, their ability to combine walking with a memory task. And so both for not just how many steps per day they took, but also how intense their activity was. Intensity also, the Hoehn-Yahr scale that Dr. Stewart mentioned, so their disease severity mattered, which makes sense. For their peers, just age played a role. And so the older we get, right, we're not going to be as active. And that played out. So I wanted to see if there was something that I could do about it. What could we do? And so we decided to have people with Parkinson's participate in an aerobic exercise program. So 12 weeks of aerobic exercise, coming and riding a bike, and we took kind of a baseline measurement, and then after 12 weeks, and then we followed up with them And so their ability to complete a dual task improved, right? So they were walking faster, or they were at least able to pair the two tasks together in a quicker way. And so that was great. So the aerobic exercise seems to be working, or seems to be beneficial. And this slide is really complicated, so I'm sorry. But let me just say a couple of things about it. We noticed when we were doing the study that some people were pedaling at slower rates and some people were pedaling at faster rates. And so we wanted to see, did that make a difference? Was there a difference between those that were pedaling slower compared to those that were pedaling faster? And so those are just all the variables that we looked at. But what we noticed was the people that pedaled, this is people that pedaled slower, people that pedaled faster. The people that pedaled slower seemed like they had the biggest improvement. And so I'm not sure why. Maybe it's because the people that were pedaling faster didn't have as much motor involvement.
Biggest improvement in what?
Biggest improvement in their ability to dual task.
Oh.
In their ability to walk and do another activity. Good question. So it seemed like the people that maybe had more motor issues that weren't able to pedal as fast still had some good improvements in their ability to dual task better after the aerobic exercise. So that doesn't mean early on don't exercise. I'm not advocating that. Please exercise. But even for those that were farther along, it seemed like there was benefit there. So I wanted to see another way. Was there another option for improving this dual tasking in addition to exercise? And so what I'm doing right now is looking at transcranial direct current stimulation, and that's just a fancy way to say that we're putting some electrodes on your brain and seeing what happens. And so it's a relatively old technique, but it has an increasing, I guess, application to rehab. And so how it works is we apply the electricity, and then we're hoping that we're making some neurochemical changes to the brain. So where we put the electrode seems to matter. But the use of TDCS has been in people, college students. It's been used in the military. It's been used to help sharpshooting, to improve memory, also to improve depression and speech after a stroke, and so recently in Parkinson's too. So we're trying to see if application of TDCS on the brain can improve walking when paired with another task. And so I don't know the results of that yet. We're enrolling people, and we'll see what comes of that. So this is the TDCS unit, and that's a nice gentleman who let us take a picture with all the electrodes on his head. So that's what we're at. And these are the folks that have helped me along the way. And Christina Kerminger, PhD student, is here. So